Oh, should I mute? Oh, we're live.
Hello again. Yeah, dumbass. We're live. Hello, it's Thursday again, and welcome to another edition of TYT Community Live. I'm your host, Jeff Waldorf, being joined by my good friend, if you believe it or not, Sean Fitzgerald, and Stephen Buckley over from the UK. Good friends, members of the show, and excellent panelists. Thank you guys for joining us here on TYT Community. We've got some fantastic stories lined up for you today. Of course, we're going to talk about minimum wage. We're going to check on what's going on over near the Bundy Ranch. Some of the militias may be getting a little out of control. Of course, a woman tries to avoid paying her taxes by claiming that she lives in the kingdom of heaven. That's a great, great story, and we've got some other fantastic stories coming up, so stick with us. And so, with that said, we're going to start out with our first story. We're going to talk a little bit about the minimum wage. So the Senate this week took up the issue of raising the minimum wage to $10.10 an hour. Now, Democrats were joined in this vote by a single Republican to vote yes on this bill. Surprisingly, it was Bob Corker from Tennessee. But that, of course, was not enough to break a Republican filibuster, as they needed about 60 votes to proceed. The measure only received about 54 votes in support. Now, Harry Reid, of course, had to vote no, so we could bring it back in a procedural measure. Now, I have to point out that even had it passed through the Senate, this bill was so unlikely to pass it was so unlikely to be taken up by the House and passed. So, for a bill, it was sort of DOA. Now, Republicans, of course, have made the usual argument defending their decision to filibuster the bill, saying, of course, that it will hurt small businesses, destroy the economy, despite how there is actually no actual evidence of that happened, since we've raised the minimum wage before, and somehow there were still actually jobs. But still, Republicans argued that there were better ways to increase the wages of Americans, but declined to give any specifics. Now, Democrats say they're going to bring the vote up again, and I hope they do. But before we go to that, I want to go to my panel and ask you guys what you think.
Well, I mean, first of all, I think as you said, it was going to be dead on arrival. It wasn't going to get past. I mean, it could have got past the Senate. No way was it going to get past the House. But the whole point of the Democrats kind of bringing this up, and hopefully they will now consistently bring this up, is that it gets the Republicans, and there are Democrats who have voted against it as well, it gets them on the record. So when it comes around to, I mean, it's too late now for 2014, when it comes to 2016, and they've had kind of 5 votes on this, they have another 8 votes on this, then they've got it on the record, and they can start running political campaign ads saying, look, kind of, Senator or Representative such and such has voted against raising the minimum wage 8 times, 10 times, and that will have an effect on a number of people. And there's people like, I think Senator Tom Coburn, who's saying, this is ludicrous, we shouldn't have a minimum wage at all, we should just let the free market decide. Free markets are brilliant. I mean, if you're going to set a minimum wage, why have they chosen this kind of $10.10? Why didn't they choose $22 or $100? Why don't they just set no limit whatsoever? And it's like, but that's not the point. The point is just trying to get people a decent minimum wage. And if you're going to vote against it, then all of your constituents who are working on minimum wage jobs, they're not going to like you. Anyone who's on a minimum wage job in Tom Coburn's state, they should be voting against him in the next election cycle with him up for election.
Right. Sean, what do you think?
Well, first, it's not too late for the 2014 elections. They're in November. But, yeah, other than that, like, I kind of agree with what Steven said, that this is, like, it's a good way to get it on record because we know it's not going to pass the House, and, you'll be able to run ads against the politicians that voted against this. The Harry Reid voting no might have been a procedural issue. Like,
it is.
No, I'm saying 100% sure it's a procedural issue, but even though that's the case, that will appear in some campaign ads eventually against Harry Reid. Like, if he was up for election this go-around, then that would appear against him. They'll be like, he thinks he's progressive, but he voted for no on the minimum wage and all that.
But that would be an example of Republicans trying to be populist.
Yeah, but they'll campaign. They campaigned on Obama cutting Medicare.
Yeah.
Remember when it was in the Ryan budget, the
That's
same
good.
cut.
That's
But yeah, like so overall, like this is just it's really a political move. Like the Democrats in the Senate want to vote for this. This is technically not a vote. This is a vote to bring the bill to the floor, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the Republicans don't want it on record, and the Democrats are trying to get it on record for the election time. Like it has no chance of passing the House. So this is like political maneuvering.
Right, and there's a couple of quotes from some of the different Republicans that voted against it. Rob Portman, of course. Rob Portman said he'd support something, a minimum wage that was a little bit higher, but he says on the 1010, it's too high, too fast. Now, you could make the argument, I guess, that it might be too fast, but too high? No way. 1010 is like the bare minimum to get by and maybe get off government assistance. Now, to get to your other point, Senator Susan Collins, she's from a Republican from Maine. She says she supports a reasonable increase, but she complained that the Democrats sought to force the 1010 through without compromise or debate. Now, this is kind of funny because Susan Collins voted against bringing it to debate. And here's something that's sort of lost on this on people. As you pointed out, Sean, this wasn't a vote for the bill itself. It was a vote to bring this up for a debate. And so to get to all of your points, definitely agree. This is the score of political points, and to get Democrats fired up for the midterms. Because Go ahead.
Okay, fine. I was going to say, just on back, it makes kind of political sense, but it also makes media sense as well, because if the Democrats are going to keep bringing this up, and one hopes that is what they're going to do, then journalists are going to have to start asking, the cable news companies are going to have to start asking, why do you keep bringing this up? Why do you keep bringing this up? And for the kind of the Fox News kind of leaning type journalists, they're going to say, like, why do you keep bringing this up? Why are you wasting so much time? And then hopefully the more eloquent Democrats will come and say, well, we want to raise minimum wage because people, and they'll be able to get their talking points across. And for the kind of left-leaning MSNBC, then that just kind of, they can just throw up softballs, which they will do for Democrats on this issue anyway. So overall, it just makes great political and media strategical sense to just bring this up again and again and again, just like the Republicans tried to do with Obamacare.
Exactly, because the political race going into to the midterms. I mean, you guys remember Nate Silver, right? Who predicted using math and statistical analysis the results of 2012. Well, he predicted that the Democrats are going to lose seats in the Senate, so they're going to lose the Senate. So this is definitely them trying to avoid that fate. And just like you said, if I were Harry Reid, I'd definitely borrow that book from the GOP's playbook. That, Obamacare, continue voting. I just fucking ram this bill down their throat over and over and over again for exactly what you said. It keeps it in the news, and they're gonna, Republicans are gonna have to defend it, and Democrats can sit there and say, "I fought for you."
Well, I mean, the thing is as well is that the Republicans are saying that if you raise minimum wage to, if it's kind of $10.10 or $20 or whatever, that it's going to cost jobs. And even raising it to $10.10, it will cost some jobs, and kind of numbers have been floated about around 500,000 jobs. But the reason for that is, I mean, you can twist numbers however you want. One of the large driving factors to that decrease in jobs is because people won't have to be working 2 jobs or 3 jobs to try and get by. They may only have to have that 1 job now if they have a decent minimum wage. So there may be less people working jobs, but that's because they don't need to because of this minimum wage increase. So that's one. I mean, yes, some small companies will probably let go of a few people, but at the end of the day, you've got to increase minimum wage. It makes economic sense, it makes policy sense, it makes strategic sense for the Democrats. So as you said, they've just got to keep ramming this idea home and just keep doing it until it's eventually passed.
Yeah.
Well,
go ahead, Sean.
It makes strategic sense from a policy point of view because we've seen this before. Is that you take an issue that's not a gigantic issue. It's very rarely this is somebody's #1 issue, the minimum wage, and you keep bringing it up until people start to care about it and start to vote on it. So like it makes sense from a strategic point of view, but like a lot of our businesses are small businesses, and a lot of them will be negatively impacted by this. Like to me, the minimum wage actually clearly like increasing the minimum wage is better for bigger companies than smaller companies, which is weird. That Walmart is so like against it because they get all the benefits because they have the economies of scale to deal with that kind of increase. So as far as like for the economy and all that, like that's more debatable. But as a political strategy, it's sold as helping poor people. So like it's basic. Like I would do the same thing if I was the Democrats, and I felt like I was gonna lose this election.
Right. And speaking on terms of course policy and everything like that, it's a good policy, and the fact that we'll be losing some jobs in the short term, as a long-term policy, the increased spending power of people that are now going to have a lot more money to spend will increase jobs in the long term. So there's going to be some short-term pain, right? But there will be long-term gain. And the Republicans, as part of their strategy, is just to kind of amplify that, oh, it's going to cost jobs, it's going to cost jobs, CBO report to prove it. Yeah, but in the short term, you're correct. But when you look at the long term, which this is why messaging is so crappy for the Democrats, because liberals are right on this issue, but people look at things so short term because that's the way we're wired to look at short term things, that a lot of people don't understand the long term effects of raising the minimum wage.
I mean, like my final point is that if one has to feel sorry for Republicans, is that they can't agree with anything that the Democrats put forward. Their position, we have to be against whatever they put forward. And so if Democrats want to raise minimum wage, we're against raising it. And the problem there as well is it's a bit similar to the Affordable Care Act, is that I'm sure many Republicans know, not the stupid people like Louis Gohmert and stuff, but some of the more sensible and reasonable ones, even though they're fighting against it, they know that if the minimum wage gets raised, then it's going to be attributed as a success and a good thing that the Democrats have done, and the Republicans know it will look even worse on them. So they don't want it to rise because they know as soon as it does rise, then it's going to be a huge kind of positive tick when it comes to voting for Democrats in 2016.
Yeah, and so they've, the Republicans have really painted themselves into a corner when it comes to this. So, I mean, politically, it's sort of a genius move. I mean, so definitely, I agree with your final point. Sean, do you have any more a final point to make before we move on? All right. So we get off the topic of the minimum wage and we head down to Nevada to the Bundy Ranch. Now there's just some disturbing news coming out of Nevada after the Bundy standoff. Some of the militias that were standing with Bundy against the BLM have apparently expanded their presence and are scaring the small town of Bunkerville. So wary is the town of Bunkerville to these armed militiamen that their representative, Stephen Horsford, had sent a letter to the sheriff of Clark County named Doug Gillespie. Now, this letter said recent events in Clark County have, quote, caused many of my constituents to fear for their safety. Makes sense. There's a group of heavily armed men walking around. It goes on to say, of course, that my constituents have expressed concern that members of these armed militia groups have, one, set up checkpoints where residents are required to prove that they live in the area before being allowed to pass. Two, have established a persistent presence along federal highways and state and country roads. And three, have established an armed presence in or around community areas, including local churches, schools, and other community locations. Residents have expressed their desire to see these groups leave their community. And finally, this letter asks Gillespie to investigate the reports of the militia's actions and work with local leaders. Now, this to me is a little bit disturbing. How these militias going from being in the Bundy Ranch to essentially occupying churches, roads, and setting up checkpoints, asking for people's papers to see if they live there. But I want to get your guys' opinion of this. So,
I have I've no idea. I mean, okay, I know they have guns and they're heavily armed and stuff. They're not just kind of carrying, .22 pistols. They have assault rifles and everything here. But I have no idea why the police don't just come down and say, no, you're not. You are not the police in this state. We are. Like, I can understand why the Bureau of Land Management doesn't necessarily want to engage with them, but why the police? I mean, I imagine that in this small local town, the police probably aren't strong enough to deal with these. I don't want to call them kind of local terrorists, but they are, as you just kind of described in the letter, they are terrorizing the local populace and asking for papers and seeing whether you're a resident there. And it's reminiscent of kind of 1930s, 40s Germany. Papers, please. Are you a resident? It's just horrific, and I don't know why. I mean, I don't know why they feel that they are entitled to do this. They're not. You're not the cops. You shouldn't be allowed to do this. It just seems amazing to me that they've been allowed to get away with this. I just can't believe that it's gotten to this stage now where they're running their own armed militia.
All right, Sean, what do you think?
Like, first of all, like, when setting up checkpoints to prevent the federal government from abusing personal liberty seems very weird and ironically stupid. Like, I don't understand what the what the thought process is behind this and how nobody's like, hey, wait a minute, this sounds like an awful idea. Like, I can understand if you're afraid that the federal government will seek revenge on Bundy and you want to like post up around him. Like, that actually makes like logical sense. But I don't get how you're going to just post up on random highways, or not random highways, but highways that don't directly lead to the Bundy Ranch, and you're going to post up there to check everybody to see if they're like secretly infiltrating. I got news for you. The government's going to come in the black helicopters. They're not going to like disguise themselves and sneak in.
Well, I mean, the thing is as well that these guys, I imagine they're overcompensating. I reckon the vast majority of these militiamen all have tiny cocks, and they're just, oh, we're so tough, we're standing up to the government, we've got our guns, we're in control here. If the government wanted to, if the FBI wanted to or they sent in kind of the army and stuff to just kind of sort these guys out, and when I say sort these guys out, I mean move them along and disperse them, not in any violent way, but just say, look, guys, you're going to disband here, or otherwise we're really going to start kicking things off because you're not allowed to start threatening other American citizens. They would piss their pants and run away in terror as soon as the tanks started rolling across. They just want to act macho, and they think they're all hardcore and cool, and they're just pathetic. And I think that's really the only reason that they're doing this now, because the whole Clive and Bundy situation is kind of past now. The media aren't talking about it this much, and really it's just these guys stroking their own egos because they've got nothing else better to do with their lives.
Right. They don't have any authority to be asking for people's identification anyway. So it's pretty ridiculous. And for somebody driving through, what happens if you tell them to fuck off and drive away? Are they going to start shooting you if you drive through their checkpoint?
Well,
what happens if you're a brown or a black person? This is fucked up.
That's exactly what I was going to say. I mean, these guys are supporting Clive and Bundy, who is now kind of a noted racist. He has racist views and opinions. So these guys are defending a known racist. So I was just about to say, if a black person kind of is driving past and say, "Where's your papers? Are you a local resident in this state?" And they go, fuck off. I don't want to give you my papers. I don't have to. You have no right to ask me. Do you not think they're going to point a gun in his face and say, "Look, listen, boy, we're going to, we want to see your papers"? Of course they are. This is just going to end up horrifically unless. I mean, hopefully, if the mainstream media just ignores them and not that much else happens, and hopefully they will just fade away to obscurity, and they'll have to go back to their I assume their wives or whatever. I imagine most of these guys are probably single, lonely men, but and hopefully they will just dissipate over the next couple of weeks or so. But for the time being, I do feel sorry for the residents there who are being terrorized by this militia group.
And another point to add on to that, if somebody goes through their checkpoint and they've also got guns, now you've got a shootout. That's fucked up. So, look, what it seems to me like is that they've set up their own little police state out there, which is pretty ironic, to be honest. We're against the police state. We're going to set up our own police state. Papers, please. Then what the fuck are you doing? Like, what's going on here? That's not freedom.
That's an excellent point, Jeff. I may or may not be concussed right now, so if I don't make any sense, you guys let me know. But like, what papers are they checking for? Because
They're
supposedly
checking identification to see if they live there in the area.
but this is supposedly a group of people that doesn't recognize the United States government. So they're checking for government papers to determine the validity of whether or not these people should be there. It's asinine, man.
I think the irony is sort of lost on them, in a way. And I want to go to one of the residents, Paula Wicken. Now, she talked to somebody on Easter Sunday and how armed militia members were greeting her neighbors on their way to church. And she said, quote, "I know of a few people that did not even enter for fear and disgust of having their church basically held captive. All for one man that doesn't want to pay his fees that are due to the government." So some people in this town don't even want the militias there. What are they doing?
There is just no reason for them to be. I could understand when they felt that Clive Bundy was being threatened by the Bureau of Land Management and stuff, and they wanted to, protect that land that they thought was Clive Bundy's, even though it wasn't. I could slightly understand their mindset now, but as you said, there's no point for them being there. And to Jordan's point as well, you're then checking papers of a government they don't want to recognise. It's just, and how many people? I don't know what it's really like in America, but over here in the UK, okay, you have your driving licence with you, but you're not carrying around your passport or the deed to your house showing that you're a local resident and stuff. You don't carry around that sort of stuff when you're travelling around the country. It's just ludicrous. These guys are absolute morons. They're kind of big macho morons who just are pathetic, and they just shouldn't be there.
All right, so we're going to go to Dan, who's a recent joiner of the Hangout. Welcome, Dan.
Hello.
So I think I'm wondering if you're going to defend the militias a little bit, because you did say something last time we were talking about Bundy, about how the militia members were trying to stand up for, freedom and stuff like that. So, let's get their side a little bit.
Well, they're trying to educate the locals about the NDAA and the Patriot Act, and a lot of them are not really even there for Clive and Bundy. I know a couple of people in that area that are participating in the protests, some with arms, some without, but mostly that's what's going around, and they're handing out pamphlets and so forth.
So they're trying to warn people about the police state by stopping people at armed checkpoints and checking them for papers? Give me a break.
I didn't hear anything about the armed checkpoint. I just thought at the Bundy Ranch itself. And the people that are showing up. But you do realize that there's the extended Burning Man by, I think it's like 10 more fucking days or something, and they called it Bundy Fest, but there's hippies and shit driving in and out that area just checking out what the hell's going on. I didn't.
Look, I just gotta say, if they're there to sit there and defend Bundy, then by all means, go to the ranch and defend the ranch. There's no reason this militia needs to go and take over the town. And look, we don't even know what militia is there. There's probably several different groups that are there. I know there was the Oath Keepers, and there's sort of an interesting story on the Oath Keepers. Apparently, some of those militiamen are not getting along with Bundy's security. Basically, the Oath Keepers have been kicked out from the Bundy Ranch, supposedly, because they left, citing a quote-unquote government source, that Eric Holder was planning on drone striking them. Now, there was a video on YouTube posted of them talking about it, but oddly enough, it has been pulled down, so you can't find it anymore.
First of all, you definitely can find it somewhere. Somebody downloaded that video, but I have to point out that Oath Keepers is not a militia group. They're just an organization of law enforcement people, active and inactive, that just reaffirm their oath, and they add like 10 illegal orders that they won't find. They're not actually a militia. It would be members of Oath Keepers that went down to the Bundy Ranch, not like a militia branch of them.
Well, the guy that heads up the Oath Keepers was the one that said that he had a source in the government that said that was just peddling these crazy things. So
I mean, Stuart Rhodes was a part of Ron. He's the head of Oath Keepers. He was a part of Ron Paul's campaign, so I don't know how connected he is to active government sources. But it is theoretically possible. I mean, he is a constitutional lawyer with ties to politicians, so it is possible that he might have a source in government. As far as a drone strike on U.S. soil, super unlikely.
Super unlikely, especially when it's militiamen. But anyway, does anybody have anything else to add before we move on?
Yeah, these militia guys, like I'm all for them defending the Bundy Ranch. Like even if Bundy like is at the minimum super stupid and racially insensitive, but probably more likely a big time racist. I'm all in favor of them defending that if that's what they want to do. But you're setting up when you start putting checkpoints on roads that aren't directly leading to Bundy. You're setting up a confrontation from the federal government that the federal government doesn't really want to get into. Nobody wants to see another Waco here. So like it's this weird instance where if you break the law in a certain way, then you might get away with it, and it's kind of a bad precedent. Like I would like them to like tone it down, not be checking randoms, and maybe just protect the Bundy Ranch, if that's what they want to do.
I had no idea they were checking randoms, but they're probably not the same people I'm referring to.
Right. It might not be, yeah. So, like, I don't know what's quite the entire situation going down there, but I'm assuming that there's a bunch of different militia or armed groups going on there for different reasons.
Right. And for the record, one of Oathkeeper's orders is we will not block off a city. We will not block off a city for any reason and prevent Americans from freely entering and exiting. So, like, that's one of the orders that they won't follow. So that's probably why they got mad at them.
All right. Actually, some of the reports that I've read is that the Oath Keepers were mad, or I'm sorry, the Bundy people were mad at the Oath Keepers for leaving the Bundy Ranch because it was supposedly going to get drone strikes. But once again, if anybody can find that video, that will help out a ton. But let's go on. We're going to skip, actually, one of our stories because we don't have the videos and stuff to go with it. Sad day. So we're going to go to how Facebook is ruining the internet. Oh, I love it. So like Twitter, Facebook is an important platform for advocacy and movement building. So when Facebook recently changed its algorithm and encouraged pages to start paying for promotion, there was obviously a lot of concern. Now, the danger that Facebook would begin to throttle pages that didn't pay and features those that do turned from concern to reality. Now, Gawker put up a great article showing the impact of the recent decision of Facebook to reduce what they call the organic reach of pages down to 1 to 2%. Now, organic reach is, of course, how many people your posts will actually show up on their feed. And if it's only 1 to 2% of people are getting your feed, that's obviously a problem. And once again, Facebook is charging people to increase that organic reach. So it's one of those two-tiered sort of things. Now that, of course, would certainly affect corporations with lots of likes, for example, Nike. But it will also affect smaller pages and communities that use Facebook for advocacy, political action, and to spread content. I think an example is our page, facebook.com/TYTNation. Little plug. Now, Facebook, for us, is actually one of our bigger mediums that drive views to our channel. Now, we're using us as an example, but it will also hurt nonprofits, activists, and social advocacy groups. Basically, anybody who wants to send out a message to people who like their page now has to pay for most of their people who like the page to actually see their posts. Now, I actually want to show you an image of the impact that it will have on some of these pages. Let me get here, show you this image. Whoops. That's not it. All right, fail. So as you can see, the organic reach as a percentage of total likes, ever since Facebook has rejiggered their algorithm, you can see that it's just had a massive, massive fall off of likes, or of organic reach, I should say. That is pretty. That's not a good thing when it comes to places that want to get out a message. And I'm going to take this graph down here. So, that's a big problem. Now the problem with this is that just like the proposed net neutrality rules, is that Facebook is adopting a pay-to-play model when it comes to actually being able to have people see the post to those who actually like their page. Now, I want to get your guys' thoughts on this. What do you think?
I want to jump in first.
Go ahead.
Facebook has to make money, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I understand them selling some like kind of priority advertising to certain groups who are willing to pay for it, but they also have to find the right balance, because the only thing that makes Facebook worthwhile is that people are using it, free users are using it, so it's best not to piss a lot of them off. So if it was like 70%, like I think it's perfectly fine that they're doing it at 98%, even though it negatively affects us, or our Facebook page, particularly Jeff's Facebook page. But if they, I think they really need to work on the right balance. Is my overall point. I think if it was like 70% of the traffic they gave to the paid people, and 30% they let be more organic and all that, because in reality, even if you pay for more Facebook likes, it doesn't always work. I mean, we didn't cover this story, but it was all over like the news that the State Department paid like $650,000 to get more Facebook likes, and it really didn't work that much. So like if they balance it so they can make money, because we have to understand, since Facebook's free, they need some way of making revenue, and letting the organic like people rise and gather on Facebook groups, then I think then it's going to be perfectly fine, and it might work out well for Facebook. But if it's like 1 to 2% is the organic people that aren't paying for it, I don't think that people are going to like Facebook anymore.
All right, Steven.
I kind of agree that Facebook, they do have to make money. They are a company. They are kind of listed on the stock exchange, so on and so forth. The whole like having only 2% organic, that seems relatively outrageous to me, because it will drown out certain voices. I mean, people probably won't be noticing it too much now, probably not even when it comes to the 2014 election. But come to 2016, the main presidential election, that's when kind of social media advertising, that's when it really comes to the forefront of everyone's minds, whether you're in the industry or not. And if it's just 2% organic during that time, I think that has a real impact on kind of the levels of democracy and having an informed, or a correctly informed democracy. Because if the Koch brothers, or I'm not just saying from the right, it could be George Soros or whoever you want to label, if they want to put a whole ton of money behind some sort of political campaign and they're paying for it, and yet you've got some other advocacy group who's, just for the sake of example, against the Koch brothers policy, then the Koch brothers are just being able to drown them out on Facebook. Considering Facebook has about 1.3 billion people now on it, that just seems ludicrous. To, like Sean's saying, it should be 70-30. I'd maybe say 60-40, but as I said, Facebook, they are going to have to make money somehow, and this is a legal and viable way to do it, but I don't think they should be abusing that legality in such a way that they are doing at the moment.
Yeah, because they might end up being a little site called MySpace, if anybody remembers, because I think this irritates people. And one thing is, how are people going to know about this if only 1%, 1 to 2% of the places that are, actually sending out this information, you can only see that, you can't even see that post. So like half the posts that you see on news feeds won't be there. It's messed up. But Jordan, what do you think?
Yeah, I don't have a lot to contribute. I kind of come down here where I feel like I typically come down on the show. that I think this is a pretty crappy, horrible thing to do, and we should certainly cover stories like this so Facebook knows that their customer base does not appreciate it. But I mean, they're within their rights. Legal doesn't always equal good, but it's their platform. They can do with it what they want.
And it's our, and just like the free market, we can choose not to buy into it and leave Facebook.
Absolutely, yeah, totally.
All right, Dan.
No, I agree with 100% what you described regarding the free market. You have your own discretion to either use their interface or move on to a competitor's. But yeah, it might end up being like a little-known website from a few years back called MySpace.
Yeah, but doesn't it, guys, bother you that it's sort of doing the same thing as net neutrality?
Yeah.
The proposed net neutrality rules of creating a pay-to-play model. If you want your voice heard, you got to pay. That doesn't seem right. They've already. You would think that they make enough money off selling us as advertising, because when it comes to Facebook, they're not selling ads. They're selling us. We are their product.
We are the commodity.
We're commoditized. Yeah, and that's.
Yeah. But the thing is, to your point and to Steven's point, that is not Facebook's job. Like, their job is not to make an informed populace or to protect the integrity of democracy or any of that. Their job is to make money somehow, and they're providing a free service for their users. And even though they're never going to stop selling our data, like, it's better than them selling our data. So, like, I'm like, I made up the 70-40 number. I wish it was a better balance, and I'm sure eventually they might find the right balance, because they're going to turn a lot of people off of Facebook. Like, every time Facebook buys a company, everybody thinks it's going to go to shit because people hate Facebook, even though they can't stop using it.
Mm-hmm.
So, I would like to point out for our viewership that everyone else in the panel realizes that 70-40 adds up to 110.
Oh,
yeah.
I was
going to say that.
He said 60-40 and I said 70-30. Ha, very funny. But yeah, I said 70-30. I just made that up as a point. But it's not their responsibility. They have a responsibility to make money, and if they want to prioritize people on their private forum, like, then I think that's up to them. Like, I just don't see how, like, we're going to stop them from doing that, and I don't think that net neutrality laws would even affect Facebook doing that.
Well, it's
their
not,
advertising.
It's not, but I wanted to draw sort of a comparison to that because, I mean, they're doing a two-tiered model. You pay to play, and that's sort of the same situation that we're having with the proposed net neutrality rules. I wasn't directly linking them, but I wanted to make a comparison because they're pretty similar from what it seems. And money has to do with both of them.
I think that it's right that Facebook has no kind of legal or moral obligation to think we've got to kind of correctly or unbiasedly inform our consumer/product, which is everyone who uses Facebook. But I certainly hope that those at the top echelons working at Facebook that they realize that by doing this, they will have an impact on the way that people are informed. I mean, these days, more and more people are seeking or going to the internet to find news rather than TV. And there's been a huge drop-off in TV, and especially for the money category, the 18 to 29 category. I've looked at recently. I mean, they're way going to the internet, and no one cares about going to TV and newspapers and radio. You can forget about it. And so I hope that they realize they don't have to care about it. They should at least know that they are going to have an impact on how well people are informed in the world.
Do you believe they're just testing the waters to see what happens, or see if people will flee to their competition?
What competition?
Well, I think they learned from MySpace. If this it won't, by the way. I hate to say it. Let's not give ourselves too much credit. But if for some reason this did cause a mass exodus from Facebook, I think Facebook has learned from the mistake of MySpace, and they will, make the adjustments they need to. But I know earlier I said I didn't have much to say, which is really never true when we're talking about me. But let me, if I can, shamelessly, promote Jeff and our show here. Like, people have to realize, if you want to gripe about this, then put your money where your mouth is. If you expect to have a free service, then it's going to get whored out. to clickbait and ad revenue, because it's like nothing's free. It's got to get paid for somehow. So if you want, for example, let's say we're talking about news. If you wanted like good news reporting, and you don't want it to, to get sucked into this world of clickbait and I won't name other, out of professional courtesy, other outlets, but we all know what I'm talking about.
BuzzFeed.
I didn't say it. But
by the way, they made deals with Facebook, and guess what? Their content is featured much more. Their organic reach is somehow super high compared to other sites. Imagine.
There you go. So if you want TYT, and specifically cough TYT Nation cough, to not have to get sucked into this world where we're driven by the almighty click, then hey, sign up as join TYT Army, become a member, donate to the Patreon campaign for TYT Community and TYT Nation, and then if we don't have to, if these channels don't have to do this, if they've got, because that's what grew TYT. If you've got a strong base that's there, if you have people who are willing to support you, then you get better content. But if we're going to take this free service that has become so integrated with our life, then we're fooling ourselves. Nothing comes for free, and it's going to devolve to this every time because it's got to pay for itself.
And I think what Jordan's really trying to say is support our Patreon and give us money.
And by us, we mean the channel.
And there's another thing too, is we get a lot of there's a lot of complaints on some of our more popular videos that we're doing trash videos, right? That we're just doing clickbait and that we're just trying to whore out to get views. That's kind of funny because and this is sort of just a thing that I bitch about behind the scenes, right? Is that we do serious stories all the time. These serious stories get like 100 views, 150, 200 if we're lucky. The other stories, like Clive and Bundy, 2,500, right? And that's a lot of views for us. Our non-serious, our bullshit kind of, is he racist or not, stories, the very stories that people complain about being clickbait are the ones they're going to, and they're ignoring the important things. How the United States is now classified as an oligarchy, probably about 200 views. It was a good breakdown and a really good discussion. And those important discussions, to build on what you were saying, Jordan, they get drowned out. And the very people that complain about clickbait are the ones that are going to clickbait, and they're ignoring all the other good stuff. Right. And that's a problem.
It's like, damn you guys for entertaining me. By the way, if you guys are really mad about those stories, I usually suggest them. So send your hate mail to this Twitter account.
But we try to make it we try to make it so that we don't cover too much clickbait, because we don't like doing it, to be honest with you. But it's what brings in the viewers. And so if we have this, we build this core audience of people that will be with us to listen to our serious stories, because that's what we really want to do. We don't want to do all this fluff and clickbait and bullshit. We want to give you actual news and good discussions about this news, and our hands are kind of tied because we got to eat.
But if you love those clickbait stories, I normally fight them with every core of my being. So send all your hate mail to screw you. I'm not giving you my Twitter handle.
I mean, to be fair, learning about the 9 different types of cat is more important than learning about net neutrality. So
yeah, that's true. Actually, because you know what? Without net neutrality, you wouldn't get as many good cat videos.
Hey, if we do a story about guns and boobs, we will crash the internet.
It will probably most likely implode. But anyway, with my rant sort of over on YouTube logic, I want to go up to another of our stories and actually enter our clickbait segment. Oh boy. Speaking of it, yes. Irony.
Great transition.
Totally. It's sort of a serious story, and because it has to do with a story that Jordan had posted to us. and it's about an execution in Oklahoma and a local pastor's response. The recent execution gone awry in Oklahoma has been attracting a lot of attention. Now, a local clergy member in Oklahoma has decided to take action on the issue and has asked the state to put a moratorium on the death penalty. Reverend Paul Coakley, Archbishop of the Archdiocese of Oklahoma City, made a statement about the recent controversial execution of Clayton Darrell Lockett. Now, Lockett was killed by lethal injection with an untested mix of chemicals that ended up taking him 40 minutes to die, and not from the chemicals itself, but from a heart attack. Now, I don't feel bad for Lockett, since he was convicted of killing a 19-year-old. I trust in the judicial process. I know sometimes we get things wrong, so if they did get it wrong, then I wouldn't feel bad, but there's no proof of that. But anyway, the lethal injection drug normally used in executions is no longer available, since the supplier of that drug is opposed to the death penalty and will no longer sell it. Now, a lot of states have been turning to testing new drugs using death row inmates kind of as guinea pigs. Now, back to Archbishop Coakley, he made a statement about the execution of Lockett, saying that, quote, "The execution of Clayton Lockett really highlights the brutality of the death penalty, and I hope it leads us to consider whether we should adopt a moratorium on the death penalty or even abolish it altogether. We certainly need to administer justice with due consideration for the victims of crime, but we must find a way of doing so that does not contribute to the culture of death, which threatens to completely erode our sense of the innate dignity of the human person and of the sanctity of human life from conception to natural death." So he's certainly a pro-life pastor, but he's for ending the death penalty, which is great. I mean, liberals get after pro-life people all the time for that sort of hypocrisy, supporting the death penalty and yet claiming to be pro-life. So for that pastor to not have that hypocrisy, that's refreshing. That's really refreshing to me. But I want to get your guys on this panel. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I'm not in favor of the death penalty. Sorry, Danny, I saw you. I'm not in favor of the death penalty in principle in any circumstances, but it doesn't hurt that we get it wrong from time to time. But this isn't even about getting it wrong. This is about using experimental drugs on human test subjects. Now, I'm pretty sure we would condemn any other country in the entire world for doing that, and yet this is just a thing. We're like, we ran out of the drugs. We might as well mix up all this stuff and see what works. Like, and it seems crazy. Like, I've seen enough movies to know that if you overdose on some kind of opiate, then they'll go out smiling and it won't be a big deal. But for some reason, that's way too difficult for these executioners, probably because it's difficult to kill a person. Now, the pastor asking for a moratorium, like, I think it's a good thing, but, like, they were killing people before. Like, if he was he's not anti-death penalty. He's anti-noticeable death penalty. Like, it's this weird issue we have in this country with sanitizing, like, evil, quote-unquote, that if we're going to kill somebody, we're going to kill them, but we're going to make it really, really nice so that you don't think about it. You know, they shut the curtain on this execution so that the people in the audience didn't get to see it because they're afraid that if people see the consequences of the policies that they support, they might change their mind. Now, I'm pretty sure that the government should be transparent and maybe just show everybody. Like, maybe we should put these on TV, although that might have, like, horrible implications with crazy people. But, like, people need to see that you're killing a human person. Like, it's not magical drugs that make them go off into the la-la, never-come-back land. Like, you're killing them.
All right, so Sean is right and Sean is wrong, which for Sean, we'll call that a win. But all right, so first off, like he has an excellent point about the fact, and we've talked about this in a previous death penalty story a while back. Our loyal listeners will remember that. I remember Dan, poor Dan's just face being like, "Whoa!" whenever I said this. But like, yeah, I mean, if the brutality is not in the way we kill people. The brutality is the fact that we think it's okay to kill people as part of our justice system. And so, like, if you shoot someone in the head, odds are they're going to die as quickly and as painlessly as if you lethal inject them. And there's just a complete gap in logic where we say one is archaic and brutal and barbaric, and one is A-okay. And so, like, so to that point, what Sean's saying, I completely agree with. Everything else Sean said is completely wrong. This guy is not anti. I forget exactly how Sean worded it because I don't normally listen when Sean speaks. But this guy is anti-death penalty, generally speaking, and he's using the fact that there is some public outrage because of that cognitive dissonance and disconnect that we have over public execution. And he realizes, like, hey, I've got a lightning rod. Now's my time to make a stance. If you look at his comments and what he really says very little, if not flat out nothing, about the very unfortunate circumstances of this botched execution. I want to read some of his quotes. This is, I guess, the only part you could say where he does actually speak to that. It's that the execution of Clayton Lockett really highlights the brutality of the death penalty, and I hope it leads us to consider whether we should adopt a moratorium on the death penalty or even abolish it altogether. So you can't say he's not anti-death penalty because he's wanting to abolish the death penalty. But he exactly what I said, he's saying, like, this specific event is the kind of thing that can polarize people to get their heads out of their arses and, you know, do the right thing. And I want to just quote him a little bit further here. We certainly need, because there's a lot of people that are going to be like, oh, I can't believe you're going to let these people go without justice. That's not what we're saying either.
Well, Jordan, I did read those quotes earlier, by the way. At the intro of the story, I did read both of those quotes.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
I find myself, you know, sort of agreeing. Now, I've been a little weird on the death penalty stance, but I'm really I'm starting to flip here. I'm flipping on this one. That definitely, this is a bad thing to do.
Did you read the quote about once we recover our understanding that life is a gift from the Creator?
No, I didn't.
Yeah, that's the one I was wanting to read next. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to overstep my bounds there. Yeah, but like what he's getting at, this is the Christian position. This is a true Christian pro-life position. Once we recover our understanding that life is a gift from our Creator, wholly unearned and wholly unmerited by any of us, we will begin to recognize that there ought to be very strict limits to the legitimate use of the death penalty. And I would say, this is not part of the quote, but, you know, at best, if not to completely abolish it altogether. The point here is that coming from a Christian worldview, we don't get to make the call on who gets to live and who gets to die. Now, that doesn't mean when somebody else makes that call, you know, you have a murder, somebody else decides someone doesn't get to live and they murder them. That doesn't mean you don't, you know, seek justice. But the idea that just like, you know, I'm going to kill you back is justice is not only, would we say, a completely unprogressive idea, but myself and the Archbishop would say is a completely unchristian idea. And I want to point out one last thing. This guy's not just a local pastor. This is what's really encouraging about this. I mean, not to downplay any local pastors that make this same kind of stance. This is an archbishop. Depending on, Catholic ranking is really complicated, but depending on how you want to rank it, this guy is either one rank or two ranks removed from the Pope. This is a leader in the Catholic Church, coming out and making a very public, very strong stand and saying we need to stop this. And that is very, very encouraging.
All right, Dan.
So, wow, a religious figure who's not only against early term, but also against late term abortion. Way the fuck go. Anyway, but the testing on human beings, and we're not even going to get into the fucking willful blindness or cognitive dissonance of people supporting a system for which they do not trust, but yet, you know, support the death penalty to execute you is rather asinine. But, you know, at that point, 40 minutes to die. I mean, it's a fucking military firing squad is more humane. And then again, the fact that we make a show of it where we have a display and a curtain and a glass where you get to actually sit and watch someone die. I mean, at that point, you're like, what the fuck are we doing?
Right. How does that make you you feel any better?
It don't, but it just, we want to have this blind faith, right? The system, in a way, most of our, I mean, Sean will agree with me on this, It has to do with us putting our faith in a construct for which we take very little part in, and hoping for it to solve all of our problems, and regarding everything from taxation all the way down to our execution policy. Is people figure, oh, you do this, the system, they don't care that 13% of them are innocent that we execute in this country at all. If it weren't for DNA evidence, they would be freaking killed. But they don't feel guilty for it because it wasn't at their hands.
All right. Go ahead, Stephen.
I'm sorry.
No, that was good. That was good.
Okay, well, we've heard from all of the Americans here. From a European perspective, it still seems mental to us, and at least mental to me, that the vast majority of people, in fact, I'm not sure whether it's a vast majority, but at least a large swathe of the populace in America is perfectly happy for the state to execute people, in no matter which way it is, whether it's firing squad. You've got one state trying to have gas chambers to kill people, which is just horrific, and even as an idea that's being floated, it just seems ludicrous. Like the entire culture, kind of mindset in America, that we're quite happy for people to die because there's a certain sense of disconnect. I think it's what Danny was saying, that it's probably not going to affect us. And yeah, I don't like evil people, and if they're a murderer, then fine. As long as I don't have to see it. And yes, there are some people, and there is some sort of sick culture where people are going to go along to these things and get the popcorn out and watch these people die on the gurney. And for me, with the whole kind of chemical issue, they are just essentially medically testing on these people, which is immoral to the nth degree.
I believe it's also seems like it would be unconstitutional.
That as well, and probably breaks a whole ton of UN resolutions, no doubt, and cruel and unusual.
Oh, not that we care. No, not that we care about doing that here in America.
But if you were going to execute someone, let's say that you just have to. It's kind of the equivalent of a Hitler or something. Someone who is definitely if it was Hitler or Kim Jong-il, you could probably convince me that yes, the death penalty is warranted. But why inject them with chemicals? I'm a hardcore pragmatist and realist. If you can use their organs to save someone else's life, do that. Don't inject them with chemicals and mess up all their organs. They might, even with all the wrong and evil that they might have done in their life, they could at least do some good in saving someone else's life. I don't know, that's probably a real far-fetched scenario, and that's never going to happen. And that's just me being a hardcore utilitarian. But it just amazes me that kind of the shining kind of light on the hill, America, kind of land of the free and the brave and what have you, that your state is still executing people with chemicals. It's just mental.
A state that a lot of people ironically don't trust. So many people don't trust the government, but we trust the government with the ability to kill people.
Perfectly
counterintuitive.
We trust them perfectly to kill people. And I just want to point out that I know what Steven said came from a good place, but is there anything creepier than the state murdering people to harvest their organs?
China! Mobile execution bans.
I admit that's weird, but if you're going to kill people, you might as well get some pragmatic use out of it. That's all I'm saying. I'm not suggesting it. I'm not saying that people should do it, but if you're going to do it,
imperialist bastard.
Yeah.
Right, but I wanna rephrase what I said, because Jordan was right about the bishop, that he is anti-death penalty. I was trying to say that it's the politicians that are all of a sudden oh my God, killing people is brutal. Those are the guys that I can't stand. And if you're not against the death penalty, you're really not paying attention. There are 18 million reasons. 1, we execute the wrong people. 2, weirdly enough, black males tend to get executed more than any other group. How does that happen? 3, it's the state murdering people to deter murder. 4, you're injecting them with experimental chemicals. 5, because I said so.
And 4 of those reasons are why I flipped on the death penalty. That's why.
You mean evolve, Jeff. You have to evolve on a position.
Oh, did I evolve? What if I'm a creationist and I don't believe in evolution?
No, you have to evolve on a position as soon as it becomes extremely convenient for you politically.
But it's not convenient. It makes a lot of sense to agree with you guys, because those are sensible. That's a sensible stance. I'm for, I prefer logic and reason and good arguments and proof and facts. And guess what? You guys have presented all of those. And it's okay to change your opinion when you're faced with actual facts.
Can we look at the historical context to this? I mean, we mentioned what interesting the Chinese chemical-induced execution goes back to the SS and the Third Reich and the Nazi Empire. And the fact that I'm surprised that a religious figure, most of them are not pro-life, they're pro-birth, but this is actually the first time I ever heard a pro-life statement from a religious figure.
It's refreshing.
Great.
It's refreshing. All right. So with that, Danny gets the last word, and we're going to move on to our final story. Also religious related, but this is kind of a hilarious story. A Minnesota woman is in trouble for refusing to pay her taxes for at least the last 7 years. Her defense? Her defense is that she is a resident of the kingdom of heaven, and therefore not subject to our mortal taxes. The woman, Tammy M. May, and her husband, Dennis, are being charged with obstruction of IRS laws and 15 counts of filing false tax returns. They allegedly haven't paid income taxes on their business between 1998 and 2005. Now, the IRS has actually notified Dennis back in 2005 that he owed taxes from 2003 plus penalties and interest. Now, the defense that Tammy used is that their supposed citizenship of the, quote, kingdom of heaven pretty much blocks them from being taxed. Oh, we're not residents of the United States. We live in heaven. You can't tax us. And oddly enough, this couple isn't the only people that claim this. Apparently there's a group called the Embassy of Heaven Sovereign Citizens Group. And they issue, get this, they issue passports, driver's licenses, and license plates. And they can do that because they claim to be a religious organization and therefore cannot be regulated. Now this group claims that its followers are not subject to government jurisdiction because their allegiance rests with Jesus. Unsurprisingly, many of its members have been charged with tax avoidance schemes and issuing certificates of so-called self-insurance. Now, the leader of this group denied that the Embassy of God sold them these certificates, claiming its members sought only the assurance of the Lord. He also added that we don't operate in Minnesota, we operate in the kingdom of heaven. Awesome. What do you guys think about this? Danny.
Okay. I am for one. The federal income tax on your wage and labor. I'm not the only one. Is deemed unconstitutional. But is this woman? Is these people seeking some form of government handout or welfare for having the mental capacity of a freaking child or something? What the fuck?
They apparently co-own a successful business and have been making thousands and thousands of dollars from their customers.
So they're not even sovereign. They're selling condos in supposedly in the fucking they're reserving condos in the netherworld. Is that where you're going with this?
Well, I forgot. And the article actually it told us what she did, but I can't recall it right now. What kind of business
they run an excavation business.
Thank you, Jordan. They run an excavation business, and they don't want to pay their taxes. I think what it comes down to, in my opinion, is that this is just a lazy way of saying, I don't want to pay my fucking taxes, so I'm going to make up some bullshit.
Allow me to point out the thing that nobody else will on this panel. They're supposedly citizens of heaven, but they run an excavation business, which obviously, if you dig far enough, you will end up in hell. Think about it.
Fascinating.
Well, I mean, like, just these people they're just fucking idiots. I hate a number of people, and these people are quite easily fit into my hate category. They're saying, oh, we're not American citizens, we're citizens of the kingdom of heaven. Well, yes, prove that exists, and of course that's not a real place, at least for most rational people. But you're going to be using the roads, you're going to be using public services I'd like to hope at least that their kids, if they have any, are going to public schools and aren't being homeschooled, because then I'd really kind of fear for the well-being of those kids if they're just being taught about the kingdom of heaven. And if they're not American citizens, then they probably haven't taken a citizenship test. They're probably illegal immigrants then. Well, then you can get your ass deported to your kingdom of heaven. It's just ridiculous. This is a sort of tax evasion. Yes, you should look after the tax evasion of corporations and stuff, but for individuals, I really hope that kind of the IRS comes down hard on these people and gets all of that money back, because kind of their local community and the federal government, people have been negatively impacted because there's never enough money to go around to fund services, and these people have been a contributing factor to that. And I know it's only a couple of £100,000 or whatever that they owe in taxes, but I think another amazing fact about this entire story is that at least the woman in this case, she's gotten away with it for 7 years, and she's been claiming, oh yeah, I'm a member of the kingdom of heaven. Why has this been allowed to go on for so long? If she writes, maybe 1 year or 2 year, and she gets away with it, but why has it gone on for so long? It's insane. This is
the only time when my legal expertise might come into effect. You are actually only obligated to keep tax returns for 7 years, so she could have been doing this much longer. It's just the IRS can't subpoena records for individuals beyond 7 years, so she could have been getting away with this for a very long time. I'm actually in favor of this woman because I hate the IRS so much. Like, even though I don't agree with what she said and she's a scammer, I think her scam is hilarious. I'm not a fan of the IRS at all. And whenever when I see the third Thor movie, I'm going to say I'm a Viking and refuse to pay the tax because I'm worshiping my god on screen. Think about it.
Jeez.
I like how I say something stupid and just he's like following my logic, and then I just drop the hammer, Thor's hammer, and something stupid, and he just reacts so poorly.
It's just sometimes, man, I can't handle it. It's just so much dumb being directed in my direction, and I'm almost dumbfounded by the dumb.
Well, the thing is as well is that there seems to be a certain mindset, and these people fall into this category that their religion or their beliefs trumps everything else. That's the only thing that matters, and don't have to care about the government, don't have to care about anything else. My religion trumps everything. No, the whole point of America was that religion and everything like that doesn't take precedent. That's the whole reason that you left the UK, because there was this kind of religious and the king and all of that sort of stuff. I can't really use the insult saying these are the most un-American people in the country, because they don't consider themselves American, evidently. If you ask them, I certainly hope they don't say, oh yeah, we're real patriots. If they do, then I put them on a category on the stupidity level lower than Louis Gohmert if they're claiming something like that. But
here's the thing, too, is that they don't have to claim something ridiculous, because, once again, I'm on the mindset is that they're not completely stupid. I think they're sort of stupid, right? But there are so much better ways if you want to not pay your taxes. In fact, you could incorporate yourself and then hide your money in the Cayman Islands, just like the wealthy do.
The guy selling the Heaven driver's license is a fucking genius.
You see, well, yeah, you can pretty much, if you're good enough, you could pretty much sell anything, because there's always somebody stupid enough to buy it. Jordan.
Yeah, all right, so I guess obviously I'm going to approach the asinine nature of this story from the religious angle, but I do want to throw in a few secular points as well about how stupid this is. By the way, the religious angle will also show how stupid this is. It's not like I'm going to defend this person. Yeah, okay, so you're not a citizen of America or whatever, so you shouldn't pay taxes. You're a citizen of the Kingdom of Heaven. So as someone who also considers himself a citizen of the Kingdom of Heaven, or Kingdom of God, depending on which gospel you're reading, Matthew or Luke, if you're talking to Gentiles or Jews, yada, yada, yada.
Details.
I assume that you're not voting because that's a right of a U.S. citizen, not a kingdom citizen. I assume that you don't own a firearm because that's a right afforded to you by the United States Constitution, not anything in Scripture. I assume that you will be hiring a lawyer to defend you, maybe in a trial by a jury of your peers. Except I should say I assume you won't be because that's a right afforded to you as a citizen of the United States of America, not as a citizen of the Kingdom of Heaven. I mean, do I need to go on? I think you'll get the point. So obviously, these are people who want to have their cake and eat it too.
These guys are illegals, and what does Obama do to illegals? Oh yeah, he tosses them out. He actually has one of the highest deportation records of a U.S.
So where
president.
do you deport these guys to? The Vatican? I don't know where you deport them to.
That's true.
Because the kingdom of heaven is about reign, not realm. But that's a theological discussion. Anyway, so let's approach this from the Christian angle.
Wait, hold on. You can't even deport them back to heaven because NASA doesn't make rockets anymore.
Fail.
We'll talk later, Sean. All right. So there's taxes are mentioned 3 times in the New Testament, and I want to go over these 3 times. 2 of them by Christ, 1 by the Apostle Paul. We'll start with Paul in Romans 13. I'm just going to quote him. Pay everyone what is owed. Taxes to whom taxes are due. Revenue to whom revenue is due. Respect to whom respect is due. Honor to whom honor is due. I don't know how much more simple you can get than that, but actually, all right, so whatever, you don't want to listen to Paul, let's listen to Jesus, who's the king who's, filthy, you seem to be claiming absolves you from taxes. There's a point where the Pharisees are trying to trick Jesus, and you get into a lot of historical context here where they're trying to either catch Jesus on breaking Roman laws or Jewish laws, because whichever one he breaks, they can get him on and turn the people against him. And so the Pharisees say, hey, teacher, we know you speak and teach correctly. You show no partiality and teach the way of God in accordance with what's true. Is it right for us to pay tribute to Caesar or not? And again, you're getting into Jewish laws versus Roman laws here and how they kind of conflicted. And Jesus gets what's going on. He knows they're trying to trap him. And he says, show me a denarius. Whose image and inscription are on it? And they say, Caesar's. The same thing is true in America. We stamp United States on all our currency. We put our president's faces on it. They say, Caesar's. So he said to them, then give to Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and to God the things that are God's. Meaning, your money is not even part of, it has nothing to do, it's not yours. This is something that belongs to the government. Like, you be a good citizen, pay what you want to pay, because in the Christian worldview, money is this fleeting thing that goes away, and the love of money is the root of all evil. All you're trying to do is not pay your money, which means you're loving your money, and you're just putting a religious dress on it. And then the only other time Jesus talks about taxes, I won't quote this one, I know we need to move on, but basically there's another example where they try to confront him, and Jesus tells Peter, hey, pay your taxes. So there's 3 times that the New Testament mentions taxes, and all 3 of those times can be broken down. The first 2, the first and last one I mentioned specifically, are broken down to pay your taxes. There is a more theological message to the second one about the image of God and giving to Caesar's, but there is also an aspect of pay your taxes. So these people, they don't have a leg to stand on. This is just people, like you said, it's a lazy way of not paying taxes, period.
Yeah, so don't be stupid, pay your taxes.
Yeah, my final point is that, I mean, quoting the Bible, especially for these people, is just pointless, because people pick and choose what they want to pay attention to in the Bible. But if these people are just kind of, they're saying, oh yeah, we're members of the kingdom of heaven, so we don't have to pay our taxes, wink wink sort of thing, then fine, they're playing the system, and I hope the IRS comes down hard on them. But if they genuinely believe that they're not American citizens, that they are a member of the kingdom of heaven, then I hope the IRS comes down on them even harder, because then they're even stupider people if they genuinely believe that, that there's some member of heaven they don't have to pay taxes. That's even worse.
All right. Does anyone have anything else to add?
Yeah, I didn't make a serious point in this whole story, and I just want to point out that it's ridiculous, and like I might think that the tax structure should be different, and I might disagree with the IRS and all that, but like you can't like any law, even if it's unjust or well, most laws should be applied equally, and these guys are kind of cheating the system in a clever way that entertains all of us and amuses me more than all of you, except for maybe Dan. But they are cheating the system, and it ain't right. Hilarious.
And there are,
but it ain't right.
yeah, I agree, and there are, unfortunately, there are so many legal ways to cheat the system that are taken advantage of by our, wealthy and the corporations here in America. And so it seems kind of ridiculous. Like whenever, and I'm sort of off topic, but whenever you see like a politician or somebody getting in trouble for tax fraud and something like that, you just kind of want to, face palm and say, what the fuck are you doing? There are so many legal loopholes for you to slip through because of our system. Our tax code is like Swiss cheese at this point. And there are so many ways that you can legally cheat the system. And this is just an example. I kind of reversed my position. I think these people are stupid. 100% ridiculously stupid and dumb. And they deserve what's coming to them. And so, there you go. That is my final point, and that is our final story here on TYT Community. So I want to thank you guys for tuning in here on the live stream, on the live show, TYT Community. Thank you guys for watching. We really appreciate it. If you want to support us, of course, go to our Patreon page, patreon.com/TYTNation. Become a subscriber if you're not. That helps us a ton. Leave your comments. Go to our Twitter and our Facebook page, and make sure to tune in tomorrow for the Social Justice Hour, hosted hopefully by the lovely and talented Rhiannon Avenine, so long as her computer holds up. So we'll see if that happens. If not, it'll be me hosting. So
wrong. It will be me hosting if Ree's not here tomorrow. So you better pray for Ree's computer to work.
Or help her, or donate to our Patreon campaign to help her get a new computer, which would also be awesome. Because that's what it's used for. It is used not for us. I'm not going to go out and get a six-pack. I'm actually going to go and use that money to improve the show for you guys. Because this don't do that. This money is for it's from you guys to help improve the show, to give you guys a better show. So that's what we use the money for. So anyway, we'll see you guys tomorrow night in the Social Justice Hour. I'll be actually on the Think Free Indiana channel talking atheist stuff. So if you want to tune into them as well, there will be a link. So there's a link on our Facebook page. Until then, we'll see you tomorrow. You guys have a great night.